Bienvenidos a nuestro octavo episodio de Guáchame, Testimonios of Resiliencia. My name is Rosario Dominguez.
Y yo soy Nancy Dominguez Fret.
So I know we haven't posted in a little bit, but we just took a break in September to recharge, kind of think about what we want for this season for our episodes. But we're back and we're excited. And as you know, in September, we remembered the September 11 attacks to the Twin Towers in New York City, and that is really the reason of today's podcast. We are talking to someone who saw firsthand what happened that day.
Yeah, so we have Frederick Fret here, mi esposo. Frederick was born and raised in the Bronx in New York, and his family is Puerto Rican from Isabela. And he's here today because he was, like Rosario said, he witnessed firsthand what happened, and he's kind of going to share his story of his experience that day, and let us, experience with him firsthand, what went down that day.
Yeah, and something very important to note, and why it's important to keep talking about this and keep talking to people who lived it, was because this happened 20 years ago, which means a lot of people weren't born then, were not aware of it happening. So it might eventually just become a thing that no one lived through it, right? So for those who are listening and weren't at school when it was happening, I want to just kind of give a quick summary of what happened on September 11 with some facts. So it was September 11, 2001, 20 years ago exactly. So 19 militants associated with the Islamic extremist group Al-Qaeda hijacked 4 airplanes and carried out suicide attacks against targets in the U.S. 2 of the planes were flown into the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center in New York City, which is where Freddie was. And a 3rd plane hit the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. The 4th plane crashed in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And, I mean, we've seen movies and reports where, some of these people tried to, divert the plane for it not to hit other critical areas. I mean, everywhere was critical, but I think it was strategic where they wanted to get. So a total of 2,996 people were killed that day. That includes 343 firefighters and paramedics, 23 New York City police officers, and 37 Port Authority police officers who were trying to evacuate the buildings. So the first airplane hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center at 8:45 a.m., leaving a burning hole near the 80th floor, instantly killing hundreds. As the evacuation of the tower and its twin got underway, television cameras broadcasted live images of what initially appeared to be an accident. 18 minutes after, a second plane sliced in the South Tower near the 60th floor. And I think that's what you saw, right? The second one. Freddie, so tell us, how old were you? What were you doing that day, September 11?
Well, thanks for having me on the show. September is really a tough month. Usually when you ask someone or anyone, do you remember 9/11? They usually remember, what they were doing, what they were wearing, the emotional connection that they had the moment they found out it was an actual attack. But for me, it's a little different because when someone says, well, what were you doing on 9/11? I was at 9/11, right? So I had just turned 18, got out of high school. I was able to enter a job training program to be an arborist. So the first day of training was actually September 11th, 2001. So I was just 18, trying to get a trade. And I remember getting there early in the morning, getting off the train station and looking up and seeing the towers there and just saying, wow, they're so beautiful. It's amazing how big they are. And even though I lived in New York City, I really didn't visit it much. You just probably passing by in a car or something. But I remember getting our direction from the foreman of the training program. And then it was towards the beginning of the class, we heard a really loud, the only way I could describe it was a truck hitting a building. Mm-hmm. That's all I kept thinking, like, wow, that was a pretty bad hit. I hope everyone's okay. So everything kind of stopped because no one really knew what was going on. And then one of our classmates told us to look up at the tower, and there was black smoke coming out of the windows, and we were clueless at what happened. And we just kept staring at the floors as the black smoke kept getting into more of the office space and more into the windows. And then the black smoke turned white, and someone started mentioning, "Oh, the building's fire extinguishing system is gonna take care of the fire." And I remember once that person said that, someone ran across the field where we were doing the training at and said, "Hey, a plane hit the building." And that's when it got a little more real for us, because we're like, wow, it's a sunny day, no clouds in the sky. I mean, the towers are pretty impossible to miss, right? So then, that's when we started trying to ask everyone questions, because we didn't have like smartphones or nothing like that. I was still playing Snake on my cell phone, and I thought that was pretty cool. But then I remember everyone just kind of standing around in shock, because little by little more news came out that it was actually a plane, and all of a sudden there's more planes that aren't responding. So we're just kind of figuring out like what's really going on, and most people were still trying to be positive, saying, "Oh, it must have been an accident." So I remember we had moved in Battery Park, which is only like 5 blocks away from where the towers were, and we were staring at the building as every other person in the area was. And I remember hearing a loud rumble and then a shadow, and when I looked up, it was the second plane going right over my head into the other tower. And it's funny how everyone reacts different to trauma, because when the plane disappears into the tower, I didn't hear an explosion. I basically my brain just focused on the noise of the shattering glass. And once that happened, I knew we were in trouble.
What were your first thoughts when you saw that? You're like there for a training, and you're trying to get your first year job, and then this is your city, right? You grew up in this city. What were your first thoughts when you saw that happening?
Well, I was born and raised in the church, so the first thing I thought was, "Oh my God, please help us," right? Because it was surreal. It was like you're there, front row seats to a movie, but the only bad part is that you're in the movie. There's no pause button, right? So then, I was just scared, but I was born in the Bronx. So one thing that people who are born in the Bronx have is that we have it's not a lack of fear; it's the respect of fear and how to react to it. So I knew the first thing that was my reaction wasn't to run or to cry or nothing like that. Is I want to help. That was basically my first reaction. What can I do to help in the situation? That's what I was thinking.
So we know from talking to you that you kind of served as a first responder, right, to that. So can you tell us a little bit about what exactly you did and how long that experience of, like you said, you felt an impulse to go and help, like what happened? How did you actually help?
Right. So our foreman, he recently passed away. His name was Joseph Bernardo. He was a retired veteran. So this guy had, steel in his veins. He said, "Hey guys, we have to protect the women and children and everyone that didn't run away, right? Because some of our group, they panicked and they left. The group that did stay, we put on our hard hats, our safety goggles, our mask, and we had gloves on because of the training. We had access to that PPE. So we put that on, and then we started just helping the women and children that, they didn't have anyone to, run to, or, they were scared. So we kind of just kept telling them to come where we were, towards the south end of Battery Park. And that's when we noticed a lot of smoke shooting up out of one of the towers, and then the tower falls. I just remember hearing everyone screaming, yelling, and then you seeing the tower fall, disappearing, and then the cloud of dust. So once that first cloud of dust hit us, a lot more people started gravitating towards us because we did have water, we did have, face masks, we did have goggles, and we were pushing guys away because Joe Bernardo said, we only are here to help the women and children. Mm-hmm. So then I remember it was a little bit of time and we're trying to sort ourselves out. Everything's covered with dust. The second tower starts to fall. And I remember seeing the second tower fall, and then the second cloud of dust hitting us. And the moment it overtook us again, I could hear Joe saying, hey guys, we have to go help the boys. And what does that mean? Well, we were in Battery Park with our group. Hundreds and hundreds of first responders was pouring in from everywhere. From everywhere in New York City, everywhere from New Jersey, everyone wanted to come to help. So Joe, with the mentality he had, he knew that all the people there who were first responders, now they needed first responders. So by the time the second cloud overtook us, Joe had mentioned we had to go help the boys. Me and a group of the job training program, we started running towards it, right? It takes an act or a certain event in your life to really really act as a mirror to see who you really are. And I knew at that point that, I wasn't someone who's going to be meek or someone who's going to shy away from confrontation. Me and 4 or 5 other guys, we ran towards the site. We ran so fast. We got there in such a hurry with the expectation to help the boys, right? All the first responders that were there, the male and female responders that, FDNY, NYPD, the EMS. Basically everyone, Port Authority, everyone was there. We were there so quickly that the paper was still falling from the second tower. Everything was cloudy. Everyone was covered head to toe in dust, which later on we found out was highly concentrated forms of asbestos, just tons of other stuff, even the benzene from the jet fuel, which actually is a cancer-causing agent as well, just everywhere in the air. And I remember running towards it, and the closer we got, the scarier it was because you couldn't see much. And then after about 10 feet in front of you, you start seeing shapes of coming towards you. And those people who had just left. The first person that we met was actually a firefighter who was frozen solid. And Matt Cahill, he was actually the one who was in charge of the training program. He grabbed him and shook him a little bit and said, "Are you okay?" And he says, "I just ran out of the towers. When I ran out, I looked back and one of my brothers, meaning one of his fellow firefighters, got pinned against the door because everyone was in a mad rush to leave." And he said when he looked back, his first thought was, I go back and save him, or I run and see my family again. And he ran. And no one could judge him. At that moment, split-second decision. He saved his own life, basically. But we kind of shook him and woke him up. And the first thing this man does, after seeing the most traumatizing event of his lifetime, he puts on his helmet and runs back in with us. So once we get there, right before we got right to where the Trade Center was, it was an eerie silence. And it's because we heard the sound of jets. And we all looked at each other and we all kind of thought the same thing without saying anything. It's another plane.
Yeah.
But the plane flew over and someone said, "Hey, that's one of ours," and we all started clapping because we were just happy that it was another plane that was gonna, hit something.
Right.
So when we got to the site, just fire, dust everywhere, and the closer we got, you start seeing things moving on the floor. And when you start grabbing those things, there were people.
Oh wow!
So we were helping some of those people up. And I couldn't tell you if it was a civilian, if it was a first responder, because literally everything was covered in dust. So that was the beginning of it. So after a while, more people, more first responders, more everybody came to help. I didn't have to do stuff like lift people up anymore. It was more of a just support role. One of the first things we did was with the guidance of an NYPD officer. We actually broke into stores to find the first responders that stood there, water, eye contact solution, any kind of packaged food, because everyone knew that it was going to be a long day. So for I got there at 6:30 in the morning. The event happened after 9, and I stood there helping first on the site, and then afterwards when more first responders came. I was just with the Red Cross just handing out food and water. But I was there until about 9:30 at night.
Wow. And we know that, like, from hearing the news reports and all that all the subways were closed, everything closed, everything shut down in New York, right? So how did you get home that day? And you couldn't. You said you couldn't communicate with your mom either. Yeah. How did you get home, and what was your family's reaction to seeing you? Because they knew you were in Battery Park, right? So.
It was tough because there was no subways, no cell phone service, and the only way out was actually because the bridges were closed as well. Because no one knew, was there going to be a second attack, a third attack, who knows? So. It was 9:30 at night. There was not much that I could do anymore because I wasn't trained. You know, I'm not a firefighter or EMS worker. So then they said, anyone who wants to go home, here we have a ferry that's going to take you from Battery Park all the way up to Penn Station, which is around 32nd Street, 33rd Street in Manhattan. So from there, the ferry took us. And then I got on the train and went home.
So it was working by that time, the train?
On that part of the island,
okay.
Yeah.
And what was your mom's reaction or your dad's reaction when you got home?
Well, I remember getting on the train and looking around and just seeing how people were still living their normal lives. You know, people were still out drinking, still eating at restaurants. I remember they were sitting on the sidewalks as if nothing happened. And I'm here covered head to toe in asbestos or God knows what, shocked, right, about what just happened. And they were like nothing. Oh, that was their coping mechanism, right, to the trauma. So I got on the train. I remember just thinking, I'm so tired that I can't even focus. I can't even think about anything. And when I got home, my mom was just happy that I was alive. And I remember just telling her, Mom, I don't want to talk about it. I just want to shower and go to sleep. That's all I was thinking.
So we've heard you talk about like asbestos and like dust when you were there. So I know in recent years we've been seeing reports of people continually dying from effects of that. I know you've heard about this often. You're probably knowledgeable about that and maybe know people that have died. Has there been anyone close to you that has died due to this exposure of asbestos and?
Well, when people think about 9/11, you normally think about, you know, the crew and the passengers of the plane or the people that died in the towers, but in reality, that tragedy affected almost 400,000 people who not only lived in the area, but the other first responders and construction crews that were part of the cleanup as well. So the big statement that's said about the people who either were there during the attack or were there during the cleanup is that not if you're going to get sick, it's when you're going to get sick. So the longer you have without getting anything is the higher your chances are of getting some form of cancer, or many people are undiagnosed with PTSD. I know for myself, I had something that's called survivor's guilt. And I always kind of growing up saying, man, why do I always have this need to be there for people and never give up? And part of it was because the guilt that I had about not actually going back to help. But I wasn't trained. I was 18. I mean, what could I have done to do anything different? I was there. The people that were there were trained professionals. So I lived with that for a long time. Just the what ifs, you know. But I thank God that I grew up in church, and I really didn't focus too much on the what ifs. You know, I just focused more on, you know, today and how can I do right today, you know, not worry about yesterday or tomorrow, but just living a right life today.
Yeah, and
And I like you said, he said, like, everyone remembers. I remember I was in school, and back in the day, we used to have TVs in every, like, those huge TVs in every classroom. And I remember the teacher letting us watch it. So we were watching the news about the first plane hitting, and then we saw the second plane on TV. And we were like, whoa. And I think my mom might have picked us up early that day because people were scared about the Sears Tower.
Oh, yeah, in Chicago.
So I remember, like, my mom was, like, really, really scared. And I just remember that. Like, I remember that day specifically. Like, not exactly everything, but I do remember seeing that. I'm like, was this a movie? But obviously we were not there, right? But I think something that, although, you know, we honor the lives of the first responders and the people who died that were victims of that 9/11 attack, there was also, we did experience the aftermath here, right? Like, seeing the racism and the attack towards the Muslim community here in the U.S.
Yeah,
right?
that came after.
Yeah, that came after that. I'm not sure how that was in you know, in the context of New York. I'm assuming that it was even maybe stronger. But I remember here, like, you know, seeing on TV, like, you know, like, things that were just not right? Like, we, like, as a country, like, we wanted to kind of curar esa pena, like, attacking that community, which was really unfair, right? And I think that even till today, there's that still exists, right?
Yeah, and I think it was also ignorance. Like, I mean, I was young. My world was Mexican. We were living in a little village, so all around us was Mexican. So it's also ignorance of not knowing other cultures and believing that...
The media.
believing that, like, it was the Árabes that did it, then they all must be evil. Like, that's kind of what you grew up thinking, but then you realize, no, that's not it. And, there was a lot of racism happening, so... And I think it's still on today, you know. So we thought it was really important that when we talked about this, that we did mention that the aftermath of that, like, we were hurt, you know, physically, and there was a lot of trauma there. But instead of us, and then there was a moment where, like, there was a lot of unity in the nation, like, you know, it was the same sentiment. But I think that something that was beautiful lasted a bit with each other, but then it turned into, like, hate towards a group, right? So, and then obviously it started other wars, you know. So we just thought,
history there.
Yes. So it's a long story, but we thought it was good to mention that, important that, and there's still racism now. But I think it was a moment where it was super, like, escalated during that time. So, yeah, and
that they change our lives forever. Like, even in the airports, like, I don't know if you remember before we would, like, travel and, like, you just kind of went in and like everything completely changed, right, from that day on. And but we wanted to thank you so much for sharing that story with us. That we can, you know, document and share with others, and, you know, just hearing it from someone who was there hits different than watching those.
I was, like, picturing it. I was like, oh my God. I was, like, feeling scared. I was, like, feeling like, I remember that day I was in 3rd grade, and that day feeling fear of, like, that unsafeness, right? Like, like, my mom can't protect me from this, right? It is something that out of our hands. So I remember being scared, and even in school, I don't know why they let us watch it as 3rd graders.
I still don't understand it. But I think the teachers were just, like, also,
trying to figure out what's going on.
And we were allowed to sometimes watch, you know, TV, the news or something. So, I remember... I remember being, like, I don't know if it was 5th or 6th grade, but, like, seeing the second plane hit, and we were like, is this a movie? Like, and then I remember, like, later on we saw, like, that, you know, President Bush was, like, reading to, like, other, I don't know, I just remember, like, little memories from that he was somewhere reading to little kids, and we were still watching, like, I think the entire day that TV was on in school. I don't know. So until we left. I
feel like that feeling of fear of, we could get attacked any moment didn't leave for a few years, because I'm like, when can it happen again? Or, like, because
it was just surreal. Like, you just never thought the U.S. could get, you know, hurt like that. But thank you so much once again for sharing your story. If anyone has any questions for Freddie, you can, you know, post them on our Instagram account, and we'll definitely share them with him.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you so much.
Talking about social media accounts, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, give it a follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, and you can follow us on our personal accounts as well. It'll be on the description box on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, you could watch us on YouTube as well. And if you're on YouTube, you can listen to us on Spotify when you're driving, when you're doing chores, etc. So we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.